All right, so if you can, turn to page 31. I'm going to ask the team leads to make sure you have a pen available. I'm going to keep my portion really quick so you guys can get out and actually talk about these topics in your small groups. You're all going to read the book, right? You're all going to read the book, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So with that, we are not going to go through page 31 and most of 32, but I'm going to leave that there for you so that when you're in the small groups, you guys can talk about that. For the small group leaders, I'd ask that you would start with the 3 questions on page 34, and then you can work back through any of the content that you feel is helpful. Pastor Nolting talked a little bit about some of these topics, mouse utopia, some of those types of things, but when I read the book, there was three key things that came away from me. Number 1 is, as men, are we creating safety? Number 2, are we taking action? And number 3, are we taking responsibility? So from a personal standpoint, what does it mean to create safety? And so I'll just give you one anecdote story from my own life. So I own my own business, and I've got a team that's from all over the world. And in some cultures, in the U.S., we're probably a little bit more, not necessarily always comfortable, a little bit more comfortable saying what we think, right? We don't have the same hierarchical society that, like in Japan, they say the nail that sticks up gets hit, right? There's no bringing up what you think. I have a team based in El Salvador. It's very similar. It's a very hierarchical, you do not bring up your ideas, you do not bring up your thoughts. So I have a team, and some of my team's based in El Salvador, and part of our core values of our business is build trust. And there's 2 parts to building trust. There's character and competence. You wouldn't give your taxes to your best friend if they're incompetent at doing it. And you probably wouldn't give your daughter to go on a date with someone who you don't have good character about, right? So you build trust. So one of my team members a couple months back came to me and he said, Jeff, you have violated our core value of building trust, quote unquote. Okay, tell me more. He's like, well, as a leader, you're wishy-washy, you go back and forth. One week you're saying one thing, the next week you're saying another. I can't trust your word that it's not going to change in a week. Okay, tell me more about that. What happened? Give me the scenario. And the point of the story is that in order to create an environment where someone from a country like El Salvador, that would be so faux pas to do, they would probably be walked out on the spot. To get them to a place of safety where they can have those kinds of conversations takes time. In fact, we talk about having a 2-year rehab program for people that come in and work with us. And the point is when you're asking yourself, what kind of environments are you creating for your families, for your coworkers, for your friends, those in your congregation? Are you creating environments where they feel safe? So I want you to think about that as you get into the small groups that you have. The second area is bias for action. We talk a little bit about this bystander effect. How many of you have felt the bystander effect? I'll give you another personal anecdote. It was a year ago. I live in downtown Minneapolis. 7 Corners, if any of you know it. I'm a block off it. I was driving out of my condo, going on toward 35W. There was a couple cars at the light right there on 7 Corners. There was a college-age girl that walked through the crosswalk. It was her time to walk. And an SUV pulled up to the crosswalk, and as she was coming, just barreled right past her, almost ran her over. And as the vehicle was going past, she slapped the back window. Vehicle kept going. Turned around the corner towards 35W. I couldn't see the vehicle anymore. All of a sudden, she's walking down, right up, if you guys know it, the Town Hall Brewery is right there, and she was walking past towards the Marriott. And this guy comes walking around the corner with intention and starts walking up and gets faster and faster and then charges her. Now, I'm still in my vehicle. She's about 40 feet to my right. And he starts pummeling her. And I don't mean a little bit. This dude was big. She wasn't. He's on top of her right in the face. And I froze. We talked a little bit about this bystander effect because we're not preparing ourselves for those kind of situations, and I froze. And so as you think about the things that you're doing, how is this bias for action? How are you setting yourself up for those future activities? And I'd like you guys to talk a little bit about that as you're going through it. The final one is taking responsibility. You talked a little bit about Mouse Utopia already. For those that are not aware of it, in Japan, there's actually one of the things that came out of the book. This is a real thing. Some of you might know about it. But there's a class of individuals, and it's not a small class of individuals. A lot of younger men. It's called hikikomori. And it's basically the idea that you sit in your room by yourself for your entire existence. You do not interact outside of your house, your apartment, and you just live there. You order everything in. You might have a job, maybe. A lot of cases, your parents are taking care of you. They isolate themselves. Very similar to what we already heard about in Mouse Utopia. It's actually one of the deadliest things you think about in your own congregations, the people you know, is when you see people in isolation. Have you seen anybody in isolation here this week? And it's not good. You should be watching out for it. Are we taking responsibility for those around us? So I want you to think about those three things. And as you get together as a group, those that are leaders, I want you to think about making sure everybody in your group ask them three questions. Okay? Question number one, what are you ambitious about? There's nothing wrong with ambition. What are you ambitious about? Question number two, what is one thing that is happening in your circle of influence, your environment right now, that you see as a gap that is not being taken care of? And the reason I ask those two questions is I want you to think about those things together, and I want everybody in the group to talk about it in your small group. And then I want you to ask yourself a third question. What is the cost of doing nothing? What was the cost to that woman when I did nothing? What is the cost in what you're doing right now when you do nothing? I want you to think about that. There is a cost to doing nothing. You can do nothing. It's an option. You have many. What is the cost of doing nothing? So my request is each of the group leaders, make sure you go around the room and you ask those three questions. What are you ambitious about? What is not happening? One thing, at least one. What is one thing that is not happening that you see as a gap around you? And then ask yourself the question, what is the cost of doing nothing? So we have a calling as Christian men to stand in the gap. When you read the book, you'll see that. It'll come through very much for you. And so with that, I'd like you to go out and have those conversations. You got till 5? Okay, so you got 30 minutes, and I'm not expecting you to come back here. So when you look at your schedule for the next thing, just go right to it. But have real conversations. Encourage each other, and think about those three questions in that context. Thank you.